taking a look at the tripod sweep against a standing opponent with a staggered stance. It can also be against a square stance. The thing with someone who's standing is that the higher their center of gravity is from the ground, the easier it is to disrupt their base, but the faster they can react, the more mobile they are. That's what we were talking about within the guard passing series. When someone is very low to the ground, their hip stability increases,
their mobility decreases.
Yeah, and so also I have a Science Behind Your Jiu-Jitsu video talking about center of gravity, stability, and balance. If you want to nerd out and get really in depth with that stuff, if you really want to truly understand what we're talking about when it comes to the physics behind this stuff. But what we're looking at now is the tripod sweep against someone standing, because if I try to do a scissor sweep against you, I'm not going to be able to reach the hips. And so you got to recognize the stance that your opponent is in and realize what the right tool is for the job. Or otherwise, it doesn't matter if you know how to do a scissor sweep correctly. It's not going to work against someone who's standing.
Yeah.
So the scissor sweep, or the tripod sweep, Rob's here standing in front of me, and I'm able to have connection to him. So obviously, Rob's going to be trying to pass and stuff like that. So we're within this pocket. If Rob's extremely far away, I'm going to have to chase him down, and it's a whole other thing to talk about. What I'm looking at doing is grabbing his near leg down at the heel with a monkey grip or a hook grip, so that I'm able to access the end of the lever the best I can, because I need to stop Rob's ability to be able to pull that leg back and adjust his base. If I grab high up behind his knee like this, he can still adjust, and if I grab midway here, it's not going to work either. We can do it with a cuff grip of the pants, but it's not the end of the lever, and we can see how there's some play here. It can still be very effective, but we recommend grabbing at the heel here because it's close enough for us to be able to do so. What I want is my foot on the same side of that hip, so it's going to be the lead side here, so that I'm controlling his right leg at the heel, and I got a post here against his right hip. Now, my leg is utilized to hook behind his knee here with a sticky butterfly hook with the, everyone's been referring it to as the shoelaces at the top of the foot here, behind his leg here, so that he cannot step that leg back. That's what we were referencing when we were talking about sweeps. Now, if I was to push him back, I'm going to be able to knock him down. But if I'm not controlling one of his legs here, like say if I don't control the front leg and I push him back, he adjusts his base. If I have this hook properly, but I don't have those butterfly hooks stopping his leg, he steps back. But if I have both of those controlled, now I'm able to actually have access to his center of gravity and shift it backwards, and he doesn't have the ability to recompose his base. Now, against certain people, you're going to be able to just push them back. And that still can be very effective because we have a leg press motion here where I'm able to just, with a lot of force, be able to drive into Rob. But what we actually want to do, as we start to shift our opponent's center of gravity back, this leg is going to start to become light. Right now, if Rob leans forward, as the center of gravity is more loaded over top of his knee, over top of his ankle, trying to pull this load-bearing frame out, it's never going to happen. But as I shift Rob back with my leg press, we can see how the leg starts to become extended, and I'm able to start pulling up on this leg. Now he has no base to the back left corner. And so what I'm looking at doing is starting to push, but also curl my leg down and start lifting my hips off the mat. So I'm not just using the strength of my leg, I'm starting to incorporate my weight behind it to push Rob down. Now this is the second stage of the tripod sweep that everyone makes mistakes on. Oh, I got the knockdown, but I allowed the scramble to happen because I didn't deny Rob the ability to base. As I knock Rob down, I control the legs. So here, I keep that leg because as Rob drops to his right hip, that's the main leg that's going to withdraw. And with the sticky butterfly hook, I feed that leg to my arm here so that I'm going to be able to keep contact and to the best of my ability, try to cover encompassing 360 degrees around Rob's legs, because as Rob tries to circle his legs out, it can be still quite difficult to control him. Where if I just do something like this, he's going to be able to, one, use his legs against my arms, in which your legs are quite a bit stronger than my arms, and he's going to be able to circle out towards the weak part of my grips. And so by being able to try and pin his legs against my legs and against my arms and forearms, I'm going to have a better chance of controlling him as I perform a technical stand-up. I have videos more specifically in depth about talking about how to complete the sweeps by denying your opponent the ability to base, specifically with this sweep, as well as how to perform the technical stand-up properly, because there's a lot of depth to it. And so I'll link those in the description. Check those out to make sure that you're very up-to-date with that information.
And, so I get you staying for a second. Yeah. So, one thing that's important to note for you, switch now. So against a really, I guess, athletic or skillful opponent who's developed their balance through some fuck your jiu-jitsu drills, when we take a grip here, it's important to note that he will still potentially be able to step his leg out. So one thing that I recommend is using either our butt or our forearm here like this. to cover the top of the foot. Right? I want to make sure that I'm covering his ability to retreat his leg through that space, so that's obviously easily achieved. But if I leave my elbow fairly open,
the weak part of the grip is exposed.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to make sure that I'm covering that. Again, it can be your forearm, it can be your butt. Both are good. And then when I'm shifting somebody's weight backwards, as their leg goes in the air, Rory is quite tall, so he is actually able to keep pushing against most people. For those of you that are not genetically deformed, you will probably have normal sized legs. And so when you start pushing, you may find that you're running out of room with your leg to push your opponent back. If your opponent is taller, it's important to still push and then do that hamstring curl of the hips, but it's also important to pull your partner's leg towards you. I mean, everyone should just do that anyway, but if you're shorter, you won't be able to sweep people without that. If you attempt to sweep a taller person, it's probably gonna look something like this. Whereas as I pull his leg to me, it's like slipping on a banana peel. They're expecting to go backwards only. As they go backwards and get simultaneously pulled forward, it's much harder to maintain.
And so we're doing this against a staggered stance where someone's going to have one leg forward, so that the back leg is going to be less accessible. That's why we use the tripod sweep here versus other kinds of sweeps. The leg has the ability to reach the back. If someone's square stance, just standing here like this, Rob has choice of either side that he wants because he can access either arm. But the thing that I see a lot that people screw up is when they're first learning this is Rob starts moving into this tripod sweep, he puts a hook underneath the first side, and whether it's mixing it up in some way,
I'm trying to reach this leg here,
and he'll never be able to make it work because even though he could kind of stop my right leg from being able to step back with that butterfly hook,
I can't push this one back in.
Yeah, so that's something that you want to make sure that's
a matching thing. If he steps forward right foot, I match that immediately with my left foot, and my left arm goes around his ankle. He goes right or left, I go right and right.
Yeah, and the back leg hooks there. So let's just do one for the back. And complete it.
And now transfer, still maintain control of both limbs, get myself to technical stand-up.
And there's two versions of the technical stand-up that I talked about within the technical stand-up video. In certain sweeps, you're able to do more of like a tucking the heel in and just rocking forward. But the problem with that is that I don't have good base behind me. But when someone's falling down, there's going to be a period where I can hitchhike with that momentum and I can go up knowing that I'm not going to run into resistance. But for the most part, and especially when you're first learning, we recommend doing the slower, more methodical technical stand-up because it's fundamentally more sound against many different levels of resistance. And it's also a bit more complicated at first to get right. And so it's much more important that you practice this. You're going to run into certain sweeps where your opponent still has a little bit of athletic potential. And if you try to rock up like this, you're going to run into that scramble situation where someone's going to be able to beat you with that.
And not only that, from the perspective of, again, like competition, or just not even competition, but being in control of every aspect of a role, when I come forward with my technical stand-up, the odds that I end up in my partner's closed guard increase dramatically. So if Rory, let's say I just kind of knocked him down and I came forward, oh crap, now I'm going to be here for the rest of the round. Whereas if I knocked him down and then I withdrew from his legs, maintained control, I'm coming up into a phase where I get to initiate my passing. If my partner doesn't have an open guard, I get to easily initiate my passing, and I'm just not allowing my partner to dictate any aspect of what's happened. I controlled them from the point of the initiation of the sweep with a kazushi. I controlled them throughout the sweep by denying them posts. I controlled them at the end of the sweep, denying them the ability to recover with their technical stand-up, and I denied them the ability to get into a guard that they favor that could potentially slow things down. And even if somebody doesn't favor the closed guard as an offensive tool, people will, let's say, resort to it as a desperation rest period type of thing. So if somebody's better than me, just swept me, and I don't want to deal with their passing, even if I'm an open guard player, I would pull them into my closed guard and take several deep breaths. So we always, when we're, and again, this is critical for competition, but just in general for being a better jiu-jitsu practitioner who's able to dictate more of what's happening, you want to perform that technical stand-up backwards out of habit and then only choose to go forwards if it's in your favor.